Welcome to We Chat Divorce. Catherine and I are so happy to welcome Holly Hughes, intuitive energy healer, today with us. Holly helps her clients recover from loss, trauma, and those types of challenges. And Holly also has exciting news to share with all of us. So welcome, Holly. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've actually been really looking forward to this because I love what you guys do. If anything like this existed when I was young and getting out of my starter marriage, I would have been all over it. I'm Holly Hughes. I'm an intuitive healer and an author, and I use my gifts to help people process pain, how they define themselves, and help them plan for their future as well. It's always their choice what they want to do and who they want to be. And my book, Real Not Perfect, How to Become Your Happy, Authentic Self. Actually, the ebook will be available for pre-order on 1/21, which is in 2 days. And then the book will be released on 2/21/21. And it's a step-by-step process on discovering how are you defining yourself, what limiting beliefs are you using, family beliefs, society beliefs, the things that you think you should be, and then how do you shed all that to discover and remember who do you want to be. And then when you discover that, how do you protect that person? You set up boundaries, you learn to say no, and then you really learned to respect the time that you need so you're always feeling okay. So when you're not feeling okay, you're like, I need to take a moment here and figure out what's going on.
Start with what you said immediately, which I'm finding that I heard a version of this before. And for all of you listening that are feeling so guilty that you feel like you messed up your first marriage, just think of it as a starter marriage or your practice marriage. I love that.
Thank you. I think that maybe I should coin that phrase or copyright it or something, because that's what I've been calling it for a long time. It was my starter marriage. I really believe in our 20s, I'm going to identify with women here because I'm not a man. I can't tell you how they feel this, but we end up repeating our parents' marriage even if we hate it, right? Because we learn from things that aren't said more than not. So in my family, I learned you give space for a wounded man, and it's your job and your responsibility to love him till he's happy. That's a lie. That's a big lie. You can't do it. It's not possible. You can't love anyone else into happiness. What you can do is learn how you need to be loved and learn how to communicate that.
Absolutely, which is so hard to do. I was taught this is what it is and you make it work. And I was the fixer. I was just going to make it all work until one day I said, I don't want to make this work anymore.
Yeah. I mean, on my wedding day of my starter marriage, his mother pulled me aside and said, it's not too late, to not do it. And I thought she was awful for saying that. Then I realized she knew her son. And then when I finally got the courage to leave, I called her and I said, I did everything I can. What's wrong? She's like, it's not you.
Well, Holly, what does this mean when your ex-husband's mother comes down the cathedral church aisle in a black dress with a black veil over her head? That should have been my sign.
Well, that's a lot of drama.
It happened.
Oh my gosh. I think if it was me, I would have asked everyone in the church to go dun-dun-dun-dun. Dun-dun-dun-dun.
Oh my!
Because oh my gosh!
Or did someone spray her with oil? I don't know. That's well, mine wore white. So
wow, that's incredible. So my first week back at work, I worked at a law firm after my starter marriage honeymoon. I think I was so traumatized when I went back to work. My boss saw it and he pulled me aside and said, it's not too late. You don't have to do this.
Wait, we should just have a not too late club.
I think maybe that's something I should 10 years.
I'm writing that down, literally. Not too late.
Too late. Yeah. That was week 1.
Yeah. When I came back from my honeymoon of the starter marriage, I like to say that I married again later, but starter marriage, he got pneumonia and moved out of the bedroom and didn't come back for 6 months. And that pretty much the marriage was over as soon as we got married. My other theory when I was younger was that I think for me, when I got married, I put the ring on, and to me, that meant I was the one for someone. And that meant if I wanted to explore any parts of my sexuality or whatever, it didn't matter because I was safe. I was with the one. I was more open and I was so excited. I learned the hard way for him. There was like a nerve here that went to every anatomical part of his body. That's like, I have you, I'm done. I wrote a poem called Lint because that's how I felt. Like when I was younger, he got me, he shoved me in his pocket, and then he didn't have to pay attention to me. And that's exactly what he did. He just like picked away at my self-esteem, one paper cut at a time. He was cruel. And it really took a stranger to tell me that I was crying every day at 3 o'clock for me to realize something was really wrong.
Yeah. So, Holly, for people who are in that situation, whether they're in a marriage that they aren't really facing the reality of it, or they're leaving a marriage, what are some tips that you give people to start down that pathway to recovery?
Ooh, that's a really good one. I think the first thing I tell them is it's their choice to make. And if a client comes to me, I have no judgment. If it takes you a year to get out of a marriage because you're not done trying, it takes a year. If it takes a year and a half, it takes a year and a half. If you decide to stay in a relationship because you have children or you're not in a place financially to do something, then there are choices that can be made for your emotional and spiritual and physical well-being that we can put into place. I mean, I would assume that's when I would tell people to go talk to you guys. What do you need to plan? How is it safe for you to leave financially, all those things. For me, what I tell them is you can make a choice. If you find out that choice doesn't work for you, you get to make another one, right? I think sitting in the uncertainty is the most painful part, right? Because like if I do this, anxiety, if I do that, anxiety, I'm a failure, I made a mistake, I'm so embarrassed, my marriage failed so quickly, oh my God, I had a big wedding, like all of those horrible self-talk things, when that's just you then beating up on yourself, when the truth is, I'm so glad you recognize that you're unhappy and this isn't working. I'm glad you don't want to show your children, if you have some, that this is what love is. Right. And then, so what we have to do now is start loving yourself. What's the first step on that? It's forgiveness. I forgive myself for making that decision that actually was not good for me. Or I forgive myself for loving someone who doesn't love me back. I forgive myself for loving a person I saw only potential in. Like there's 1,000 like ways to forgive yourself, and it would depend on the person in front of me. But I really do think it has to do with forgiving yourself so you don't start the process in shame.
Yeah. I love that. And that goes hand in hand to your point of what we do. We talk to many people who are approaching the thoughts of considering divorce or separation or whatever it is. And they have so many questions, and so many times they don't even know how to ask it, but they know that they would love that relief of whatever the end result may be. Like, will I be able to stay in the home? Will I be able to financially support myself? Will I have to get a job? What does my future look like for me financially? Just knowing that. And to your point, you can know it. You can know it ahead of time and set that aside and then continue to take steps towards your decision.
Well, wouldn't it be great if everyone would look in the mirror and say, I forgive myself for wanting to know what my marital estate looks like? It sounds very silly after you say that out loud, because you're so many women in particular feel very guilty about requesting what a pension is with the employer, what the IRAs are worth, what the house is worth. They feel so guilty for asking these questions. But if we take your practice into our hands and say, I forgive myself for asking if I can afford my budget and to live in this home. I forgive myself for asking or needing to know what our financial portrait looks like. When you say that, it sounds almost, we sit here and say, what do you mean? Are you kidding me? You need to forgive yourself for getting this information that is your information to have. You don't need to forgive yourself is my point here. But if you say that, it may let you relax a little bit.
Yeah, I think, oops, sorry. I think for many people, it's because money is equal to emotion, right?
Oh, yeah.
So emotional control, emotional, like all of that. So you guys are the this part of it, and I'm like dealing with all the of that, right? For people. So for many, money equals love. And if I take my child out of a home they've known, I'm hurting them. Nah, you're not. You're just changing the environment. And I'm a person who's lost my home to a fire and an earthquake. I've lost everything I've owned, and I got divorced. So I count that 3, right? But so like it's a building, and a home is like the love you bring into it. So the stuff isn't actually making anyone in your house happy. I know so many people who come to see me in the process of getting divorced or thinking about it, and they just go on shopping sprees. I'll hurt you where I can, and that's in money. And they're afraid of the retaliation. And I think that's where they give a little bit of power away. You know, you built a family, you are due some of this. And the worst thing someone ever told me was, but I think it's true, not the worst, but the only good divorce is a divorce where each person is a little disappointed with how it turns out, because then it's probably the most fair. Right.
Right.
I always say you each are going to feel a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. And knowing what is, or what, you know, what the court considers fair and equitable, because that is the deciding line when you're facing divorce, then you know where you can compromise or not. You know, to your point, then you're empowered to make decisions for yourself that you know about, and you're not making it from a place of fear, but a place of knowing. And that's just such a better place to be.
How do you guys help people who are, I've seen this a lot, where the children become weapon? So like on your side of it, how does that, like, are there guidelines that you can help someone be prepared for that battle? Especially, there seems to be a lot of narcissists lately. Just saying, they're out there.
Lately?
And like, yeah, I'm trying to be nice. So I'm like, you know, I think that's another mentality to deal with. Like for me on that end, I have to get them to stop believing what the narcissist has told them. Right. Then like to remember to trust what they're feeling and thinking, like believe what their body is telling them and their mind is telling them, not be gaslit. But there's also that thing where they just, narcissists see children as objects, not people. So, and then they hurt the mother, who will do anything to protect their children. So is there, like on your end, how do you help with that?
Well, we focus on the knowns and not so much the unknowns, and the data doesn't lie, right? So anyone who wants to stand behind their words but not support it with the data, that should be your red flag for one, right?
I love that.
So we bring everything back to what it actually is, and it's an unbiased approach that we take. So if a spouse does not want to, and typically the narcissistic spouse or the spouse who's in control of the information does not want to give that information, we have a recommendations and a step and considerations document. It'll all be outlined. So you really just have to follow your blueprint through our portrait, which really is a very empowering place to be, because you're not focusing on what you're afraid your kids are telling you, if they're adult children, or what your spouse is telling you, or what your mother is telling you, or anyone else that might be coming from a revengeful state, right? You're really focusing on the knowns that are in front of you. And you're guided to ask these questions as if it's a security blanket for some. And we see their faces just become very empowered. So every time a professional like you might be working with them, you get to say, go back to the knowns of that document, not so much what you're hearing, the hearsay all around you. So I would say that's a major part of what we do. I don't know, Karen, if you want to add anything to that.
Well, because my work is involved in the budgeting, I help people not only with their lifestyle, which is how you're accustomed to living, but also how you'll be living post-divorce. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse, not worse, but less financially. I often hear, well, he said he's not going to pay for X, Y, and Z. And he said this and he said that. And I always say, well, guess what? In this particular situation, he is not the controlling factor here. So the data is the controlling factor. And this is what you have. And this is what you can expect to receive. And this is what is your portion. And this is the amount of the estate that you'll be able to choose for yourself how you choose to spend the money. And he's not the deciding factor there. So whether or not he says it, we say this all the time, doesn't mean it's true. But so many people find themselves in relationships that what the other person says equates to their truth. And that's not necessarily
Isn't that the
so.
world right now?
Mhm.
Right? Whoever's the loudest in theory is the one
Yeah.
telling the truth. And it doesn't work that way. I love what you were saying, Catherine, before about like words and actions have to align. And I think that is so much of why people get divorced in the first place, right? Something's amiss at the Circle K, and it's time to take into account. And I do think it is so empowering, like to get past the fear. I saw your document. I looked into it because like I loved it. It's like, it's so methodical. And if you could only do part of the checklist for the day, well, that's more than you've ever done before. You took like, I feel like sometimes time limits, people give themselves X amount of time. And I think once you start a process, it's okay to go with the flow a little bit. And if some days you're emotional and you can't handle it, well, then go feel your feelings, take care of yourself, and come back with your thigh-high boots the next day.
Yeah, I always said, listen, if you want to take a bottle of wine and drink it tonight and cry your eyes out and watch the saddest movie in the world, go right ahead. I did it a ton of times when I was going through my divorce. But that next day, you're waking up and you're moving forward in a positive direction. I don't care what it is that you do, but you're going to do something positive to get yourself moving forward.
Yeah.
And you know what? When a lot of people, and unfortunately I have to say women, say that he said that he'll take care of this or he'll pay for our kids' college education. Of course, he's a great father and he's going to pay for anything that they need. Well, then you know what? They're not afraid to put that in writing. If they're so adamant about it, why wouldn't they put it in writing? Or if they say, of course, I'm being fair with you. I would give you anything that we have and you're entitled to all that. Okay, well, then show me the statement so that we can make sure we do it properly so we don't go back to court to fight over it sometime in the future. Because if it's in writing, you could do anything you want later on. No court comes to you and say, are you two following what's in this writing? No, but if somebody isn't following it, then you have the document already to go execute it without having to go through another lengthy, expensive litigation process, if that's the route you took.
Yeah. And to balance that a little bit, there are a lot of relationships where the household financial manager is the husband and the spouse just really doesn't understand how things work. And so going through our process, she is clear about financially how their marital state is and realize that the husband is coming from a good place. And they can talk about the division of assets in a much better way because she doesn't feel vulnerable. She doesn't feel threatened. She doesn't feel like a victim. She knows. And a lot of times that preserves the family unit in a way that it would not have been preserved otherwise.
I love that, because she's not a victim of anything. She has her knowledge, right? Knowledge is power.
It is. It is.
And in divorce, knowledge is absolutely everything.
Yeah.
So are your numbers going up because of COVID? There's a lot. Are you seeing
January 1, 2021?
I will tell you our numbers that have gone up substantially since we began 5 years ago practicing our processes are the men who come to us. Because there are really good men out there who are just as unhappily married as the woman probably is. And they do want their spouse to be aware, and mostly not because they want to give away half their estate. Listen, nobody wants to give away their estate. However, they want to move through the process in a less stressful, timely manner. And the way to do that is to make sure that both parties are informed financially, because you won't heal anything emotionally if you're living with regret of a bad financial decision. So if we can get the more people that we can get to come to the table to share the information that they are going to eventually have to share in a less costly way, in a more amicable way, then Karen and I are doing our jobs, and that's changing the way people get divorced. The same with aligning with you. If we can help people heal financially and make smart decisions now so they don't live with regret, you're going to be able to help them heal faster because they are only healing themselves, not financial regrets that they have.
Yeah, you can always make a new plan, right?
Yeah.
You can always make a new plan. I had
always pivot.
Yeah, my favorite is the starter husband. When we got divorced, we were young. I was 28 when we were getting divorced, and he went into the kitchen and went fork for fork, fork, fork. I was like, dude, what are you doing? And my attitude was, take it all. I'll get more. Like I'll start over. I'm okay to start over. I was really young. If I was going through that now, I probably still have the same attitude. You just whatever. Like, I think the big thing came, like, remember in the 90s, bread machines were like the rage.
Oh yeah, I just got rid of mine.
Well, we had a bread machine, and he's like, what about the bread machine? And I was like, take the bread machine. And in my head, I'm like, choke on it. Choke on it. The only thing I wish I fought for was, and there was a piece of art that I really loved, and we flipped for who got which piece. And I should have just paid him off to take what I want, but he would have never given it. So but that was like the one thing. But really, like, it hurts to go back to zero or reset, and it's not a do-over, it's a restart. You get to pick and choose from that point forward. And it's okay. And, I don't like the word regret. I mean, some things hurt and some things aren't great. And unfortunately, in our life, it's called growing pains. They're not growing joys or awesome flower sauce. It's just like we learn lessons through a bit of pain.
So true.
And it's okay to get frustrated. I think a lot of what I help people with is they come to me, they don't know what they're feeling, right? Because they haven't allowed themselves to be pissed off, sad, remorseful. Some of it is shame, a lot of guilt, but they're like, if I say what that is, it makes me less. And it doesn't make you less. It just makes you smart.
I love it. I love it. Holly, how can people get a copy of your book?
Oh, so I am up on Amazon, and it will be Real Not Perfect, How to Become Your Happy Authentic Self. And the paperback will release on February the 21st.
Perfect.
Awesome.
And for all of you who would like to go to Holly's website, it's hollyhughesintuitive.com. And if you sign up for her newsletter, you get a free copy of 10 Steps to Say No. So take advantage of that as well. Thank you for being with us today, Holly. It was a great conversation. We look forward to more.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.